I'm here today with Anna Wolf. She's a very well-known Feldenkrais practitioner, really an old-timer. I hope you don't find it offensive. She did her training with Moshe Feldenkrais in San Francisco, and she just has years and years of experience. She's also an assistant trainer and also has been doing that work for a long time, since the 80s. Welcome, Anna.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here. That's great.
I'm so glad you're here because we're here today to speak all things shoulder. And I know that you have a personal experience with a frozen shoulder. So I would love to hear sort of your story and how did you resolve that? I know it can be quite difficult for many people.
So I immediately, of course, want to get into a pun about, shouldering the burden and all the rest of it. I mean, if you think about the amount of our language that we talk about emotional or felt sense, but we use bodily metaphors. So I always have to get into goofing a little bit. What was my personal experience with it was really interesting because I actually had two frozen shoulders, one right after the other. So one was because someone was very kindly doing, I think, a massage and pulled me too hard. Now, who knows what was going on with me, that I couldn't just go with the movement. And the other one, I was in a boat and I wanted to keep the boat from hitting the pier. So I did a quick movement and hurt myself.
Mm.
But the thing that was interesting was I actually found it a really interesting process because there was the injury and then there's the brain deciding, oh, that hurts, I can't go there. And so you get a fixed response in the brain to the movement, and there may still be some nerve impingement with being a swollen nerve. And the thing that's interesting about the way the Feldenkrais works with it, and I did all these with myself, was instead of trying to force the arm up, I found where I could lie comfortably on the floor. And then I would find where my arm was just at the comfortable place. I could get, say, to here, completely supported, comfortable, easy. Then I'd start moving the rest of me away from my arm. So that I was lying down, I was totally in control of the movement. It was very safe. And the key was that I paid attention, not always that the shoulder felt safe, but also that I kept my breath and my breathing comfortable, full breaths, playing with my breath, moving a little bit away from the shoulder, so that I always felt safe. My breath was safe. The amount of discomfort I could find was safe. And I would do a little bit at a time, and I'd work, both ways. I started on the comfortable side, and then I moved to the less comfortable side and tilted my legs. And just, if anybody's had any experience in Feldenkrais, they know about going slowly, listening to yourself. And later on, I guess, what's it called in yoga? It's called a baby pose, where you're kneeling and you have your forehead on the floor. And I could get, say, one arm up to here, and this arm wasn't quite comfortable. So I would take a full breath, inch my fingers along the carpet, and exhale. And I only lengthened through the shoulders enough to exhale. That's tiny. But just a little bit, and then an exhale, and then I'd lie on my back and breathe and make it easy. So the whole trick is finding where you're listening to the fullness of yourself. And that's the place that you can move and shift and change from, not going at the pain, not fixing it, but really finding where you can listen. All of me can connect with the shoulder, can connect with what I'm doing with my arms. Simple, small things.
So it seems simple, to you as a Feldenkrais practitioner, but what I observe a lot with clients is that when there's a place of pain,
Yes.
they actually anticipate pain, and so then they freeze, right? They stop movement in that area.
Yes.
Because it's like this protective mechanism. So do you have any advice with people who experience that?
I
Um,
would say respect the pain. And, as Dr. Feldenkrais did in his own life, he would find what could work, what can work, what can I do? So the focus becomes not so much the pain, you respect that, you look at the edges of it, but what can I do that can feel safe and comfortable? Because we change when we feel safe. We don't change, we constrict when we don't feel safe. So you
mhm.
push against the pain, your whole system's going, wait, no, no, stop. And you will tighten and contract, which of course doesn't help you have that sense of ease and flow and lightness that we all enjoy.
Mhm.
And I think the biggest difference is there's a sense of autonomy when you will respect yourself, work with yourself, find what works. Is it perfect? Maybe yes, maybe no. Can we fix everything? No, but can we do an incredible change towards our ability and our skills? Yeah, it's pretty amazing.
And in this process of rehabilitation, right, rehabilitating your shoulders, have you developed sort of like a toolbox or hygiene for your shoulders? I'm pretty sure it's connected to the whole body,
It's
but
the whole thing. It's the whole thing. And that's the trick. People go, well, I can't deal with that. It's too much. But if you go slowly, it becomes this fascinating path. It's like, now that I'm looking at my background, it's like a path through the woods.
hmm,
You find your way, and there's an enormous amount to look at and enjoy and savor and find the witch hazel there. And oh, look, avoid the poison ivy over there. And if you take the time, it's a wonderful journey. And it's not just, oh, I need to fix my shoulder and get out of here.
yeah.
It's like, oh, isn't that interesting? That connects here to the middle of me. So, oh, if I'm going to move my shoulder, there's some connection that's deep through the whole of my spine. Oh, my sit bones are changing because I just moved my shoulder.
Hmm.
We need words to be able to speak and understand things and scientifically analyze things. But because we have separate words, it doesn't mean it's separate. So this may be my shoulder, but if I'm really going to reach for something, it has to come from my sit bones and my legs and my pelvis.
Hmm.
So we have the separate words, but it doesn't mean that our relationships are separate. Sometimes the issue in the shoulder can be because there's not as much mobility through the ribs, or there's holding in the belly and the belly's held tight. So then the whole torso is fixed in a way that doesn't allow us to shift and adapt and change.
Yeah. And I remember watching a really amazing lesson that Moshe did with a woman who had a frozen shoulder. Um, and I wonder if you got to observe Moshe working with that, or just talking maybe about shoulders in general as sort of um, connected also to our lifestyle, right? That the this kind of head forward, shoulders forward, computer related.
Yeah, and I think the biggest mistake that we tend to do in this culture is we have, oh, pull your shoulders back. Well, what that does is it actually fixes the chest and it fixes the shoulders. Shoulders actually, they hang on the ribs like a shirt on a coat hanger. So if you're not going at yourself and trying to fix your shoulders, if you can find that sense of just letting the shoulders rest on the ribs,
Mhm.
it's a really different experience. I live part of my life in Manhattan. I'm an extremist. I like extreme country and extreme city. And it's really interesting watching people walking down the street because there's so much of this, right? So I play a game with myself where I do occasionally stop at a street corner and I'll just stop and feel my feet and settle and breathe and hang on my ribs, and then find out what it's like to walk for a block where I'm walking in the woods and I'm feeling my feet and I'm walking at the speed of my feet instead of the speed of my thoughts.
Mm-hmm.
And then I get pulled out of myself and I do Manhattan and I do all the stuff you have to do to live in that environment, because it is an environment that you have to survive in. And then I'll get to a place and I'll settle back in again. So you learn the path, you learn the way from what we do habitually to something that's different. So it's
Mm-hmm.
not perfection, but it's learning how to navigate that relationship between what's easier, simpler, finding a way, being curious. And that takes being present for ourselves.
Yeah, this is definitely different from physical therapy paradigm, which, sometimes I get frustrated with when my clients go to me and then to physical therapy, and then they get the advice that they need to strengthen,
Yeah.
you know, oh, you need to strengthen these muscles around the rotator cuff area. And I always ask why, and they never have an answer. Um,
Well, I
so,
think there's room for
yeah.
both worlds.
Mhm.
Um, and sometimes, I mean, I know for me, when we started with this work, I mean, when I moved to Colorado, my husband and I tripled the Feldenkrais population of the state.
Mm.
When I actually would say, "Oh, I'm a Feldenkrais practitioner," and somebody knew what I said, it
Mm.
was like, "Thank you, thank you, thank you," because no one had ever heard of it. I mean, it's still rare, but
Mhm.
people have heard of it more often. And I always would say, if you can for a while, work with this mode. And if you can, work with that mode for a while and feel which one works for you. Because there are things that they do well and there are things that we do well.
Mhm.
I prefer what we do. That's why I do it. But I think that's important. And I think for people to go, oh, this is what works for me. That's extremely important.
Mhm.
And it is frustrating when you see someone actually reverse something that was moving along well, but they have to sort that out. They have to figure it out.
Yeah, I always give a metaphor that this is a science experiment, and you have to have a clear understanding of what the input and
Yes.
the output is. If you have mixed input, you don't know what actually worked for you.
Hmm. and
Mm.
and there are things that the medical system needs to do, and there are things that we can do. I mean, the understanding now of neuroplasticity, that was stuff Moshe was developing back in the 1940s.
Mhm.
He had science that he based his scientific understanding on. We have actual really phenomenal science now around it, but he was taking things that were just beginning and talking about it. And,
Mhm.
and part of that was because it was what he felt, saw, learned in his own life, saw what was happening with the people he was early on teaching judo and that kind of thing. So, I mean, as a physicist, he had a real appreciation of the science of things, and he also had a very strong appreciation of relationship and the power of relationship. So it's an interesting piece where he could see that everything shifts and changes by relationship. And my favorite analogy is, we don't live life as a straight line. Life is more like we're in a sailboat, we tack. We're going in a direction, but we have to allow that to shift and change.
Mhm.
And it's different because so much with the internet and with computers is quick and rapid, and we become that's the way it has to work. But that's never been the way we evolved as an animal. We didn't evolve that way. We
Mm.
can do it. We can do quick, but we didn't evolve to live that way all the time. And we have to appreciate our basic animal survival nature. And that,
Thank you. Thank
yes,
you. It's really
welcome.
insightful. And do you have any parting advice for people who are listening, watching us right now?
Enjoy. Get curious and enjoy it. I think having open curiosity you know, curiosity isn't a word we talk about a lot anymore, but I think that open curiosity of how can I do that? How can I do that? I mean, I'll always remember one woman in a training program said, I even enjoy putting the dishes in the dishwasher because I start looking at how I'm doing it and how I'm feeling doing that. Now that's pretty far in that direction, but that curiosity about, how can I do that differently? How can I make that work for me? That's different than just getting frustrated and pushing against. So I'd say stay curious.